Thank you and welcome to RECO12. My name is Purdy and I am a recovered addict, recovering human being. Obviously, what an honor and a privilege to come in and be of service today and of support to Justin, who has had some amazing family news, first grandchild. So sending love, Justin, to you and yours, and enjoy that time. RECO12, guys, it's about exploring the common threads of addiction and sharing tools and hope for those on a similar path. We gathered from diverse backgrounds, faiths, and places to learn and support one another. Our speakers represent various fellowships, addictions, and afflictions, thus showing the common threads of recovery, no matter our addiction or affliction. Today's speaker for the 233rd meeting is Jeffrey B., first-time RECO12 speaker. His chosen talk today is entitled, What You're Looking For, You Are Looking With. I'm excited to hear his experience, strength, and hope today on this topic. We'll get to his talk and the Q&A afterwards in just a minute. But first, for some business, RECO12 has several recovery resources in our family of podcasts and social media communities. To learn more, listen more, connect more, or just hang out and learn and grow with us. You can check out the other podcasts in the show notes of the podcast by going to www.reco12.com and exploring them. RECO12 is self-supporting, and your contributions help us continue our mission. If you would like to support RECO12 and become a spearhead, visit www.reco12.com/support or click on the links in the show notes and the chat for one-time or monthly donation options. Your support makes a difference in keeping us sharing our message of recovery. We look forward to each meeting receiving from the light reflected from our speakers. That light inspires hope, meaning, worth, and growth within us, the listening audience. Now let's introduce our guest speaker for today, Jeffrey B., and give a little background on him in his own words. I'm a sober member of the 12-Step Fellowship. My sobriety date is August the 16th, 2003. Found freedom from alcohol, freedom from self, and freedom from the delusion that I can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if I only manage well. It seems that when I reach glorious sobriety summit, I can see and get to experience more and more. Let's stay safe and let's stay. Take it away, Jeffrey. The floor is yours.
Great, Purdy. Thank you so much for everyone that's here and does just does the work behind the scenes and gets things like this accomplished or get going, sort of thing. And I'm truly grateful to always share inside some sort of format that has to do with addiction, alcoholism, or whatever one's disease may be. So thank you so much for asking me to do this. And to Justin, the experience that guy gets to have today, I don't know why I'm getting overwhelmed right now, but the things we get to do today, the things we get to witness today, and how we get to show up with new experiences and new ideas, I just want to say congrats to him and his family. So my name is Jeffrey B. I'm a sober member of a 12-Step Fellowship. My sobriety date, as Purdy mentioned, is August 16th of 2003. And that still blows me out of the water. A couple of decades of sobriety, but still some insanity, that human existence, that the bedevilments on 52. Sometimes I just get overwhelmed, I'll just call it. But usually it's quite quickly I can get out of that spot if I can just let this design for living in. I never come prepared, I never really write things down because it's not really comes from the heart, right? I'm a true believer through experience about the language of the heart, and we'll just kind of see how this goes. However, I do have a little bit of a topic, and it's what you're looking for. So we're all looking for freedom from whatever addiction it is, or alcoholism, or whatever it may be. But what are we using? What are we using if we're looking for happy, joyous, and freedom? What are we using? Are we using a little bit of self with my arms crossed and my nose scrunched up like I'm smelling something sour? Or are we using something that has been passed down for years and years and years and years to allow us to just become with depth and weight, more free. What I'm looking for, I'm looking with. But this talk will be based on step 9. It will be all around step 9, because that's where I found freedom. I found freedom in all 12 steps. I mean, if we look at the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, why do we have these 12 steps? What are these 12 steps for? What's the purpose of these 12 steps? We look at step 4. Well, Purdy, it's because we need to uncover and discover the truths about ourselves. Yes, that's correct. Those are the mechanics of step 4. But for me, the reason why there's a step 1 through 12 is to get me closer to a power that will solve my problems. That's why. All steps are designed to allow Jeff to get closer, to get unblocked, and to find love. So in this talk, I might mention a 3-letter word. I just call it God. And if anyone has issues with that word, I ask you to set aside everything you think you know about that word and have a new experience so we can remain teachable with it and replace it with something. Replace it with whatever you want it to be. As an example, replace it with love. So if I say, what would God have me be? I'll replace it with, what would love have me be? The God thing, here's a step 2, 3 sort of question. What attributes does your God need to have in order for you to trust him? Wow. Attributes. So for me, it would be loving, it'd be kind, it'd be compassionate, a little bit humorous, all powerful, all that stuff. So there it is. There's God's will. Jeff, show up and be loving, kind, compassionate, a little bit humorous, all that kind of stuff, right? So if I use those words, please just put in your own words in there. It doesn't matter if your God is a majestic eagle or a 3-legged llama. It's all one. The reason why I say llamas is because I got llamas in the backyard. I got 3 llamas, a little hobby farm that this God has given me into my life, right? So I'm going to qualify myself here. I love the fellowship I'm in. I love it, love it. So I'm probably going to quote a couple pages. There's a lot of people that say, don't quote pages based on your experience. But I'm like, it is my experience. The big book of Alcoholics Anonymous is my experience. So on page 44, it simplifies, the doctor's opinion up to 1 to 44 about what Jeff's problem is. And it's, Jeff, if you honestly want to, you cannot quit entirely. What does that mean? Because I've tried to stop drinking about 2,800 times. True story, about once a day for about 12 years. I tried to stop drinking, and all of a sudden by 2:00 that same day or the next, I found myself drunk, even though I didn't want to. So I couldn't stay stopped. And then the next part of that says, if when drinking, I can't control the amount I take. So what does that look like? Well, it looks like this. Purdy, I'm going to throw your name out in there, if that's okay. Hockey game's on tonight. I don't know if there's hockey in the where you're from, but let's just say, it's the Jersey Devils against the Vancouver Canucks. You got to work tomorrow. I got to work tomorrow. We got obligations and itineraries to do. We're only going to go for 1, 2, or 3 drinks. That's it. And we end up going, we watch this game, and as soon as I put that first drink of alcohol in there, that first drink takes the second one, and that second one takes the third. And then what happens to me is I don't go for 1, 2, or 3. I go for 11, 22, or 33, and I'm just getting right-sized. I'm just getting fired up, and then it continues on from there. So that's what qualifies for me to be here or to share in a 12-step fellowship. My drinking escapaded to a place of it's almost like horseback riding. The 4 horsemen, if you've heard of the 4 horsemen, where there's that frustration, that bewilderment, that despair, all that kind of stuff, sort of thing. And I got to a place where my life started to become really, really unmanageable, where let alone the 2 symptoms of alcoholism, that lost the power of choice and control, but I also stopped showing up for family gatherings. I started to get unemployable. I started to lose things, especially myself. I started to lose a smile. I started to lose laughter. And I became really depressed, and I became really alone. I became really, really afraid. And for someone of my variety, to get past that, I need to find a sense of ease and comfort that comes at once after a couple drinks. But like I said earlier, those couple drinks end up being a lot more than just a couple drinks. right? So jumping into the ninth step, it's going to be around my father. My father, he's about 6'3", 230 pounds, blonde hair, piercing blue eyes, just a big Swedish Viking kind of a guy, right? And I loved him, and by working and practicing the four step, I got to it, look at things from an entirely different angle about the things that he did or didn't do or said or didn't say. Like, oh, I wish my dad hugged me too much, that kind of thing. And when I became not just a prosecutor, columns 1, 2, and 3, and I became my dad's defense attorney. Wow, it really, really shined on what possibly my dad was going through at certain times in my life, sort of thing, right? And so about 1998, my father, so his name is Hoken, and his nickname is Hoagie. So Hoagie's going to show up a lot here. He was diagnosed with cancer. So this is 98, early 99, and I didn't know how to deal with that. I couldn't deal with that, so I drank over it. It was just a sensitive situation in my life that I just couldn't handle. I couldn't feel. I just couldn't deal with, and I needed that sense of ease and comfort. But a few months later, so right now in my life, in my alcoholic career, I'm fall down drunk, and I'm starting to lose weight, and I'm starting to, I just can't stop, and I can't control, and I can't manage, I can't do anything like that, right? So a few months after his diagnosis, well, maybe about 6 months, uh, he got relief from it, where they tackled the cancer, and he recovered from cancer, right? But by this time, I'm really starting to go fast downhill. And December 1st of 19 no early or summer of 1999, the cancer came back, and he was diagnosed with terminal cancer. How does an alcoholic of my variety deal with that? Is I drink over it, right? And I couldn't be around him or my family just because of the things that I did or didn't do, or I said or didn't say, because of my alcoholism. I couldn't. It was really hard to show up. It was really hard to see him struggle and go through all this kind of stuff. So I really vacated myself from family participation, or from love, or from being there. And it was December, late November. My dad's in palliative care. I'm almost on the verge of homelessness from drinking. Um, he was allowed to go home for the weekend, and the reason why Hoagie wanted to go home for the weekend is so he could be beside his loving mom, our wife, my mom, and his three sons, my older son, and my oldest brother and my youngest brother. And somehow they found me, and I came home for that weekend. So I'm looking about 110 pounds soaking wet. I'm unshaven. I haven't showered. I'm sore all over. I'm just jittery, and I'm just intoxicated. And I walk into that house, and they're in the kitchen. And I walk into the kitchen, and something hit me. I just could not be there. I could not see my dad. I could not see my mom. I could not see my brothers. I needed to get out of there. I'm broke. I don't know what to do. So I left that room, and I went into the living room, and on the living room table was this leather wallet. So I grabbed that wallet, and I rifled through it, and I pulled about 40 or 60 bucks out of that wallet, put the wallet down, put the money in my pocket, and I turned around. And when I turned around, there he was, my dad, Hoagie. And he's sitting there with tears strolling down his face. He's got a month to live, my friend. And he looks at me and says, "Son, why and how are you doing this?" I didn't know what to do. So I froze for a few seconds, and then I just left. I just booked it. I grabbed a bag, a skateboard, and one shoe, and I went on a little trip. And it was the downtown east side of Vancouver. And if you don't know the downtown east side of Vancouver, it's Skid Row out here, and it's not a nice place. Down there, people would call themselves God's forgotten children. But that's where I ended up. And then December 1st, I got the word that my dad passed away. He died from cancer. And that led me on a never-ending spree until I sobered up And I found myself on the Lionsgate Bridge. So if you picture in San Francisco, they got this Golden Gate Bridge. It's majestic, it's vintage, it's just so powerful. We have one up here in Vancouver that's called the Lionsgate Bridge. And the first week of December, it was a Friday night at 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm 30 years old, and I'm standing in the middle of that bridge, looking over the edge, wondering how warm that water was. And when you jump off a bridge of that size, of that magnitude, you don't survive. You don't. But somehow I got off that bridge, and I don't really know how I got off that bridge, but I got off that bridge and I found myself at my little brother's house. And the key to this about my little brother is he's in the fitness industry. And one of his clients is a guy named Corey W. And I use just the initial W because he's a friend of ours. And they were talking, and he said to my younger brother that if you ever find Jeff, you send him my way. And Corey W. is a director of a treatment facility out here. So December 24th of 2002, I found myself in the treatment center, and I loved it. And the reason why I loved it is because I was with 50 men that were suffering from a spiritual malady just like me. I opened that door to that bedroom, and there all you people were. So I wasn't quite alone. You know, and I did the 12, by myself, kind of did the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous in a room sort of thing. And I stayed suffering. But when I got to the 8th step and my dad's name was on there, I have to somehow make amends to him. Our big book talks about, I forget what page it's on, where we write a letter, the people we cannot see. We write a letter. So I wrote a letter to my dad. And I kind of felt it, and then I threw it in the trash. And the following, my mom's birthday on March of 2023 or 2003, I couldn't stay there. I would look at my mom and I would think of my dad. I'd look at my brothers and I'd think of my dad. I had the worry, remorse, and morbid reflection still riddled all over me. Something didn't change. Something wasn't enough. You know, and then within a few weeks, I ended up relapsing, not because of that, but because I didn't get step one, because I didn't understand the problem and the solution and the program of action. I didn't grow my spiritual life is the reason why I relapsed. But then I came back August 16th of 2003, and that's my sobriety date today. So my second time through, the 9th step, amends to my dad, to Hoagie, looked a little different. It was still a letter. But I decided to use words that are a little bit more deep, words that are a little bit more magical. And I read it and I felt it, and I did a ceremonial burning of this letter. And my friends, I got a sense of ease and comfort from doing that. I got a taste of freedom from doing that. But Christmas that same year, I was at my mom's house with my 2 brothers, and I couldn't look at my mom. I couldn't communicate with my brothers. The 4 horsemen were riddled all over me: terror, bewilderment, frustration, and despair. I had worry, remorse, and morbid reflection about what I did or didn't do, or what I said I didn't say around my father and my family. And I suffered. And I suffered in the rooms of my 12-step fellowship for years, for 7 years. I thought that I was struck with this burden, that I was going to have to live this way with all this regret and all this remorse. And I'm sitting at the back of the room of an AA meeting. The back of the room, a friend of mine, James L., he's a son of a gun, if you can put those 2 things together. He would call it the shoe section. And the reason why he calls it the shoe section is because that's where the slippers, loafers, sneakers, and runners hang out. And that's why we put some of the chosen frozen people with sobriety in the back of the room, so they can grab their belt buckle and pull them back in when they try to leave the door, sort of thing, right? So I'm sitting in the back of the room, and this guy, his name is Charles S. I swear he beelined it to me, but I'm pretty sure he gracefully walked to the back of the room and introduced himself to me. And he said, "Hey, Jeff, my name is Charles." And I'm like, "Charles, I know who you are." And I was riddled with fear, riddled with so much fear. But I also had a sense of, finally, there's someone's going to come and talk to me. 7 years in recovery, and this is the first guy that came to me and said, "Jeff, are you willing to bring your big book, come to my house, and let me walk you through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous?" 7 years. This is why our 12 step is so important. So I suffered in sobriety and recovery for 7 years, and not really knowing it. Not really, I thought I was doing it all. I thought I had it all, but I missed so much stuff. So I went through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous with Charles at his kitchen table, and I had a massive spiritual experience with this. Hoagie, my dad's name was in step 4. He walked me to the 4th column of step 4, and I became the defense attorney of my dad, and I got relief. And there's a direct correlation from step 4 to step 9 to step 11. When we got to step 8, Hoagie's name was on there. And I said, Charles, you've heard my story. I've wrote 2 letters. I just can't get past this. I think I'm just going to have to suffer my entire life through this. And he said this to me. He goes, Jeff, when you in your 9th step around your dad, use the first 8 steps in your 9th step. And I'm like, what do you mean? I didn't know you can do that. He goes on page 58 of our big book, and how it works talks about that we're willing to go to any length. And then on page 78 in our big book in step 8, right before you're into step 9, it talks about willing to go to any length over victory over alcohol. And then on page 79 in our big book, it changes. It was agreed that we're willing to go to any length to find meaning action, to find a spiritual experience. And he said on page 80, he gives us the clear-cut directions on what we do around these amends. And no one ever showed this to me before. And it says, what we do is we get consent. I'm like, Charles, how am I supposed to get consent? My dad is not here. He says, do you have a mom? I'm like, yeah. He goes, you phone your mom, get consent from your mom. And then the next part of that equation that says we talk to someone about it, meaning a sponsor. So I used Charles, and he gave me some offer for your considerations to do. And then it says we ask God. We ask God to we ask God for help. So I did. And then God showed up, and this is what happened. He said, Jeff, phone your mom, get your mom's permission, let her know what you're going to do. This is all coming into my consciousness. And I phone my mom. I'm like, Mom. And she's like, hi, son. Now, she's one of the ladies for the past 7 years that she gets to watch the news now and not think that her son's name is going to be body found. She's so happy that I'm sober, but she doesn't know about the illness, the suffering of my spiritual malady in here. I said, I want to come over and I need to talk to you. So I go to her house. And as soon as I walk in that door, I look to my right, and to my right is a pillow. And God said, grab the pillow. Now, this pillow has meaning. This pillow is an oversized pillow that helped my dad, Hoagie, get out of a chair when he had cancer. It was really hard because he was so frail and no muscle for him to get out of the chair. He used it to support his back. So I grabbed that pillow and I grabbed my mom's hand, and I go into the kitchen. I look out the window, and you know what I see out the window is this big pool that my dad built his 3 sons and the neighborhood kids back in the late 70s and early 80s. So I grab my mom's hand and we go to the pool, because I remember waking up on a Saturday morning and looking outside when I was just a wee kid, and then seeing my dad with a cup of coffee, vacuuming that pool, getting it ready for us. I go to the pool with my mom and I put that pillow down, and she sits on the pillow, I sit on the pillow, and we let our feet just dangle in the water. And I held her hand and I made direct amends to my dad through my mom. And it happened. From that day to this day, I have been free. I no longer have to ride the 4 horsemen around this. I no longer have regret, remorse, or morbid reflection around this. And I said, Mom, is there anything I missed? And I got to making at step 9, a really deep amends to my mom at the same time. And trust me, she let me know about the things I missed, and I became willing to make these things right. And she just said, just keep doing what you're doing. Just keep doing what you're doing. And what that means is I keep going to AA, I keep sponsoring, I keep doing the 11th step, I keep doing all this design for living that we've been shown and asked to do. I had faith, but here's where faith turns into trust for me. The following day, I'm in my house. No, I met a girl named Brandy in the 12 step fellowship. Yeah, this alcoholic had to marry a woman named after booze. But anyways, and we have 2 kids at this time. They were out, and I'm sitting there on the couch. I'm just sitting there, and all of a sudden I hear this on the door, and I get up and I answer the door, and guess who's at the door? This is 2000, this is the 2011. My dad passed away December 1st of 99. I opened that door and it's my dad. 6'3", 230 pounds, perfect hair, piercing blue eyes. He looks so good. And he walks into that house and he says, "Son, I just want to see how you're doing." And he looks around the house and he says, "I want to let you know that I'm really proud of you. And there's things I need to do now." And he walked himself out. I found myself standing in the middle of the living room. Now, whether you want to call it a dream, a vision, it was a spiritual experience that I had. And I know it's from a direct result of the 9-step process that just happened the day before. A week later, this is what I know what my dad does. I had an actual dream. And this dream, something told me to go to the hospital. I go to the hospital and there's the majestic, beautiful, elderly lady that's dying, that's crossing over from natural causes. You know, she's just lying there on the hospital bed, but next to her was a man holding her hand. She took her last breath. I look down at this man and it's my dad. When she took her last breath, she passed away and he disappeared. So I know what my dad does today. He helps people. He's of service to people that are crossing over, whatever that may be. I'm sitting in this chair about 3-4 years ago. This office is chair at my work where I am right now. And my sponsor, the sensitive Marty J, I love this guy so much. His sponsor, Dwayne, if you ever heard Marty's talks, he calls him Shrek. He had 54 years of sobriety, and he passed away this February 7th, a few years ago. So I'm sitting in this chair and I go to God. I go to God in prayer and I say, "God, please help Marty. He's going to go through a grieving process. You know, thank you for being there with him, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera." And then I turn and I go to Hoagie. I go, "Dad, I know what you do. You're going to meet a guy named Dwayne. He just passed over. Please have your hand stretched out and welcome when he comes through the pearly gates." And then I ended the prayer. And I got an instant craving for caffeine, for coffee. And there's Starbucks down the road. So I shut the office down. I get into my truck. I pull out of the driveway. I turn left to go to Starbucks and I get cut off by this white Mercedes. I slammed on the brakes. And when we're almost in a car accident, what do? We take down the license plate, right? Guess what the license plate said? Hoagie. How, like, there's no coincidences in this, you know? It's not odd, it's God. Coincidences is God's way of staying anonymous. It just keeps giving me so many more experiences and proof. It's not faith, it's trust. I trust my God today. I know my God is all powerful. I was doing a talk in Portland, Oregon, 2 years ago, and I'm sitting there after the talk with the mother of my children, and I'm getting lost. We're trying to find somewhere to eat for dinner, and I'm getting a little frustrated. And I'm stopped at a red light, and she can see that I'm frustrated, and she says, "Hold on." I just don't know where to go. And she says, "You're exactly where you're supposed to be. Look at the street name." And I look up at the street name, and guess what the street name is? Hoagie Avenue. Go figure. You know, I was doing a talk at this rally in January this year, and this brand new guy came up to me after the talk, and he was in tears, and he just says, "I want to thank you for everything that you've done, that you've said. I can relate to a lot of things." He didn't know that the hat he was wearing had HOGIE on the front of it. And I'm just looking at him going, "Dad, I know you're here, and I love you too." So what you're looking for, happy, joyous, and freedom, what you're looking with, because my first 2 attempts at these amends, I was using my brain. I was using like a self-imposed crisis. I was using the fact that I can wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this amends process if I only manage well. And I didn't seek in. I couldn't get to that place of acceptance. Page 417. Acceptance. You know, I cannot be like Elsa and Anna and Frozen and let it go. It's just not that. I just can't do it. I got to use this design for living, for sponsorship, for the we in the first step, for unity and this power. And my life is just unfolding into goodness. You know, it's just truly amazing that when trouble comes, the things we get to do. When trouble comes, we get to cheerfully, not like this, cheerfully capitalize it so we can go to this power, so this power can demonstrate his omnipotence, meaning his power. And can become sober, happy, joyous, and free. Wow, I think my time's up, right, Purdy? But that's what I got here. You know, if you look at the bedevilments on page 52, the human condition, trouble with personal relationships, full of fear, and in the 9-step promises, look at those in my hoagie story. They're completely opposite in those promises. You know, I've realized that God is doing for me what I cannot do for myself, and it's not just strictly about being sober. It's about emotional sobriety. Wow. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Jeffrey. Wow, incredible. So beautiful to listen to you as well. Those spiritual experiences, incredible. Are similar in my journey, you know, that I'm connected with you on that basis, and you can see where your piece is from. And it's really beautiful to listen to. And thank you so much for coming and sharing with us. Just a reminder, guys, to the live audience that are here, if you have a question for Jeffrey, please type them in the chat of the meeting. And if you wish to remain anonymous and not have me read your first name, please make note of that in your questions. So we will go to the question section. It is now time for our speaker to answer any questions you have. I've written a few questions down myself personally, and as I receive them in the text, guys, I will read them out, and I'll get to try and do as many as I possibly can over the next 20 minutes. I think my first question to you, Jeffrey, when you started speaking at the start, you know, I could hear the emotion in your voice. You know, as you spoke about another fella, you know, we started off the meeting speaking of us, and I could feel that raw emotion in your voice, which was beautiful, by the way. My first question is, how important to you is fellowship in the program?
Pardon? Sorry, I missed that.
How important is fellowship to you in the program?
How important?
Yeah.
Massively. Oh, Purdy, it is. I'm the type of person growing up from the age of 6 until I met you people, and even in sobriety, that my reset button is becoming a paralyzed mime. When I get riddled with fear, when I start to manage my own life, I isolate. You know, when I become lonely, I do the best thing, and that's called isolation, you know, which is a catch-22, a double-edged sword for someone of my variety. I was so alone. I remember being 6 years old and 7 years old, two-week stints at Children's Hospital in the psych ward. I didn't know what was wrong with me, but what that did is it put me in that so lonely place. I couldn't. I had nothing, you know. I'm the type of person that grew up with 2 really good friends, and now there's just one, you know, and now there's hundreds because of the fellowship. But like I mentioned in that little talk there, the first word in the first step, we, and unity. That's where fellowship comes into play. This is where a home group comes into play. It's a big, massive, loving deal for me. The fellowship, it keeps me a part of. Even, okay, here's a quick little story. So I'm sitting at Marty's 40, he's got 48 years of sobriety, my sponsor, but it was 44 years birthday. We're all going out for dinner. I'm okay, but I'm sitting there with about 40 people by myself, kind of stuck in the corner, just kind of watching and observing. And he walks by and he goes, "Hey, Jeff, how you doing sitting there in isolation all by yourself?" I'm like, there's my sponsor. And it brought me into the we, because I still had that, okay, I need to kind of like shy away. I need to be kind of quiet. You know, put me in front of a microphone at an AA meeting, it's a different story. Watch out. There's a lot coming at you, sort of thing. But the fellowship is 1/3, is 33% of my happiness, meaning the 3 legacies, right?
Yeah, amazing. Wow. Keeps me a part of. So that isolation is my drug of choice. I've never heard that before. How true is that? Okay, guys, just so you know, any questions, please put in the chat, guys. I've got another one here for you. Jeffrey, you spoke about the mechanics of the steps, the importance of the journey, but then you spoke about the feeling, the experience, and how each step brings you closer to God. My question is, how did that relationship with God develop, and what's the importance of that relationship in life now for you?
The mechanics in A. Okay, so after Charles' experience, I got on fire. Like I got lit up. I started to study the literature. I started going to big book workshops. Started doing a couple talks here and there in AA. I started to sponsor a whack of people, but I became over time really mechanical, meaning that I know on page 95, line 2, words 6 and 7 are "you're welcome." Look it up. And on page 149, line 31, words 9 and 10 are "thank you." I was that kind of a guy. I was the kind of guy that would have his big book and give you a little tap on the head if it wasn't in the first 164. I became really mechanical, but then I got sick because all I was doing was I had so much knowledge. But the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous talks about experience and knowledge. At 14 years of sobriety, after this Charles thing, after the Hoagie thing, I'd suffered. And I had a massive step 1 experience where I went to go drink because of the things coming at me. I'm going to show you. And God stepped in and it woke me up. And that's how I was introduced to Marty J. That's a whole nother 30-minute story. But it's the big book has to come alive. In the 9th step, it talks about that the spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. Let's put our experience. What's our experience on page 55? What's our experience on page 19? What that did for me is it birthed emotional sobriety. It birthed the experience that I needed to have. It birthed an awakening of what the promise of step 1 is, that, Jeff, you will relapse if you don't grow your spiritual life. Experience. Yes, knowledge is good, but it'll only get you so far. Hope that helped out there, Purdy.
Yeah, no, definitely. Most definitely. Thank you, Jeffrey. There's a question from Katie in our audience, just so that I'd like to hear a little bit more about, and you just spoke about living the experience as opposed to the mechanics, and I want to talk a little bit more about living amends and the importance of living amends, doing it that way.
Well, when my mom said, you just keep doing what you're doing. So, okay, I might have a little bit of an issue with living amends because living amends is step 12. Living amends is practicing these principles in all our affairs. Right? So when my mom said, keep doing what you're doing, my mending with my relationship to Hoagie and my mom and my brothers is I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm not living the living amends. I'm doing 9th step amends, and I'm going to be doing it for the rest of my life, the rest of my sobriety, on top of step 12, which is practicing these principles in all our affairs, all of Jeff's affairs. So for someone of my variety, when I'm stuck in self and I'm not using my heart, I'm not satisfying prejudice or searching deep within myself, and I rely just on living amends and not actually making direct amends. I'm not saying it's wrong, and I'm not saying we won't get freedom from it. But for me, if I'm just doing living amends, knowing that there's more trudging in the 9th step. There's more that we can do if we just use the fellowship, the unity, other people's experience, the stories in the back of the book, listening to speakers, listen to listen to your sponsor, or listening in AA meetings. If I'm just using, I'm not going to do that anymore. Okay, it's like this. So let's just say I stole $50 from this grocery store. Well, my living amends is not to steal $50. Have you mended it? No, go and make amends and bring $50. And now practice step 12 around that. Living amends. I get it. But there's more. Trust me, there's more. There's more. I haven't rifled through my dad's wallet or anyone's wallet in over 20 years. Living amends isn't, I'm not going to do it. Living amends is a lot more than that, You know what I mean?
Yeah, completely, Jeffrey. Thank you so much for explaining that. Okay, another question from Sam in our audience. What does letting go absolutely mean to you? Your experience with that, letting go absolutely.
Well, how hard is it? Absolutely. You know, if to let go, absolutely. What's coming to me right now is this: why don't we bring in the four absolutes? Because absolutely and absolute. So the four absolutes, as some of us know, come from the Oxford group, which the 12 steps came from. And so to let go, absolutely. How does one know it's absolutely let go? You'll feel it. Trust me, you will feel it, right? Because you're not running around a horseback riding, if you know what I mean. You know, it's is it absolute love? Is it absolute honesty? Is it absolute unselfishness? Is it absolute pure? If it is, I'm pretty sure the let go absolutely has happened. There's equations throughout the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous that designed for living, an equation, even an equation before the equation. That's my new stint thing I'm on right now, that have allowed me to grab more depth of this spiritual life. It's like, here's an example. This is a really good one for me. Page 55 of our big book. It talks, there's this three items equation on there before we go to God, before Jeff goes to God. It's almost like I'm entirely ready in step 6 before I go to God in step 7. And it says to lay aside prejudice. So whatever's coming at me, whatever is happening in my life, no matter how sensitive or when trouble comes is happening, Jeff, set aside everything you think you know about this. Lay aside prejudice. And what happens there, Purdy, is it opens a channel from my heart to my thought life. You know, page 53, the bridge of reason, you know, where we can't step ashore, we're relying on sound reason, and it's going to fail all the time, sort of thing. If I can lay aside prejudice, which allows me to think honestly, because now there's a highway, like a blood vessel going from my heart to my brain, because I'm not clouded with old beliefs and old ideas, and I search diligently within myself, the let go process of absolutely happens. Because here's the solution to doing that little equation on 55. There's a bottom of here's more pages. Man, I'm just riddling you people with pages. Bottom of page 19 talks about real tolerance. Imagine when things are coming at you and you have real tolerance for this, and it shows up like that I have a respect for people's viewpoints and opinions, even though I disagree with them. But I can respect their shortcomings and their defects, and I can be of service. I can be of service to them. Wow. If I can be of service to a threat with love, there's a let go absolutely happening there. There has to be. It's a spiritual law. There's no way around it.
Jeffrey, amazing answer. Just the spirituality of you, brother, is so beautiful to listen to you. Thank you so much for that answer. There's a question from Dave in our audience. I'm going to sort of link it with a question that I've got, because it was almost on the same wavelength there, Dave. We're thinking the same thing, but you spoke about the importance of step 9. You know, you spoke of your father, the talk with your mother, and that sitting together, that amends process, and the freedom you felt from that point, the spiritual experience, your father walking in, seeing him helping others. That was the big one for me, and it's so that you saw him helping others. The question from Dave in the chat was, how often do you get to go through the 164 pages with your sponsees? And my question was, you know, talk to us about step 12 and helping others.
Well, okay, so step 4 says that no regular business that doesn't do an inventory will go broke. So for me and my sponsor, we go through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous once a year, one-on-one sort of thing, right? I sponsor a lot of people. It's funny, some people say, Jeff, how many people do you sponsor? And I say, oh, about half of them. You know, that comes from my good friend Charlie P. He met Hoagie because he's left us, but I also with some sponsees, we do an online Zoom big book, 12 steps emotional sobriety. Where we actually do the 12 steps together. Sometimes it ranges from 10 to 120 people. It all depends. So it's usually 2 days a week I'm in the steps with someone. right? I mean, I have a life, I have a little business, I have kids and, you know, 2 dogs, three llamas and 30 chickens. Like I'm pretty busy, but that saves my life. And I have, even if you look at it from a sponsor perspective, man, I learned so much stuff from the sponsees. Or even, you know, I sponsor a guy with 30 years of sobriety, 10 more years than I do. And the stuff that this guy is just opening my mind to by us practicing these principles, working through the 12 steps of AA. It's what saves, it's the deal. It's the real deal. So that's 33% of our 3 legacies. We talked about, I guess we're going around the triangle here, guys. Unity, the we, fellowship, recovery, the 12 steps of AA. You know, it's and I love it. I love it. I love it so, so much. So often, Dave, often. And step 12, I try to do every single breath I take in is step 12, but trust me, no. Like today, the barista self woke up. Page 30 of our big book says we had to concede to our innermost selves. It's plural, meaning there's more than one egoic alcoholic personality within inside me. Let's look at that. There's Jeff the alcoholic, Jeff the Mr. AA, Jeff the businessman, Jeff the friend, the father, the homeowner, all these selves, even Jeff the car driver. This morning I woke up when Mr. Barista self showed up. The first thought in my mind was, you are tired and you have a busy day. It's Hazel, my beautiful daughter's 9th birthday. You got to do stuff for her birthday, all this kind of stuff. Go downstairs and make some real strong coffee. And I'm like, whoa, I'm not even on awakening step 11. This is what's coming at me in my brain. So to practice these principles, I'm going to practice step 11 now when I woke up in the morning this morning. I need to shut down the barista self because that guy's trying to run the show. So I go to God and I said, God, divorce me from self-pity, selfish, and dishonest motives. You know, help me, guide me. Show me how you would want me to, like this letter right here. That's why I have it here. Be. What would God have me be, not do? Because if I can be in love, if I can be in happiness, if I can be in breath, in mind, body, soul, the do shows up in beingness. Make sense?
Yeah, be one of those bees, but beautiful. Thank you so much. There are no more questions in the chat. One final question, really, from me, Jeffrey. It's just you speaking now. Here are related your business, kids, chickens, llamas, life. From darkness to light. What's life like now?
Cancer hit my house during COVID. Business started to suffer. Teenager. Do I have to say anything more? You know, my oldest boy, Jeffrey, I didn't name him. That would have been ego. He's a teenager. He's going through his teenager stuff. And a buddy of mine from Toronto flew out here to bury his brother who died from a spirituality addiction, died. And he's sitting across from me right here in this office in my little blue chair. I call it my Chuck Chamberlain chair because I just picture that's what his chair would look like. And he looks at me and goes, Jeff, how you doing this? How you doing this? I know what's going on in your life. And I looked at him and I said, Jim, I'm not. God is. What does my life look like today? Love. Trust me, I'm not perfect. There's not a concrete statue of me at City Hall. You know, I thank God for step 10, where we continue to watch for these 4 main things that branch out into 100 forms of different things. If I decide to stay stuck in self, stuck in trouble, stuck in selfish dishonesty, resentment, and fear, it's a scary place for someone of my variety. I call it the bridge of reason, like I talked about before, and I can't step ashore, even though I know I should, even though all I got to do is phone you, Purdy, even though all I got to do is, Dave, let's hang out and get a coffee. You too, Sam. I won't let go of that doorknob, or I won't, like a speaker on this, the 2 weeks ago talked about dropping the rock. It's a scary place to be. And this is how scary it is for alcoholism, or even addiction, whatever your addiction is. is that at certain times, Jeff won't have that mental defense against the first drink or think. And the step one promise will happen. For me to stay stuck in misery and depression, knowing that there's a way out. It's like having a 6-shooter with 6 bullets in it pointed at my head and pulling the trigger and hoping the gun will jam. This is serious stuff. So my life today consists of practicing these principles in all of my affairs as best I can. And when I can't, that I have a phone that weighs about 1 pound. It doesn't weigh 1,000 pounds. And I phone this 7-digit or this 10-digit number and I say, hey, Martz, I need to talk to you. And my sponsors, what he does for me today is he gets me to God. That's his job. That's his job. He gets me to God. And sometimes he says this, Jeff, that was excessive and inconsiderate. I'm like, wow. He tells me the truth. I get to feel the sun on my face today, Purdy. I get to watch my breath go in and out. I have a boy, my middle boy, his name is Oliver. He was born as above elbow amputee. And he says to me in the playground at school, he says, Dad, I'm going to go do the handlebars. And I'm like, how's he going to do this? And that little boy put his left hand on the handlebars. He swung that little arm onto the next handlebars. And he put his left arm to the next one. I watched him do it. He's one of my biggest teachers, and I got to be a part of that. What's my life like today? I can say it's happy, joyous, and free. It's a lot more than that. A lot more. As long as I keep trudging the road of happy destiny. As long as I keep in the unity, service, and recovery. As long as I keep shaping a sane and sound ideal as how God would have me be. Currently, right now, I'm going through a separation and a divorce. It's not hateful. It's just a reason, season, or a lifetime. I'm okay. I'm okay. There's a little bit of a definition or description of my life today, besides being sober. And I get to go through all this kind of stuff.
Jeffrey, thank you so much. A big thank you to Jeffrey for a fantastic RECO12 weekly speaker meeting. Guys, if we missed your questions or you have any more, consider joining the WhatsApp community. Email RECO12pod@gmail.com to join in the conversation. If you haven't already, please rate and review the podcast on Apple Podcasts. It's a powerful way to work step 12. Next Friday, we are scheduled to hear from a repeat RECO12 speaker, Young L, who previously spoke on us with meetings 170 and 203. We're looking forward to his powerful message. If you would like to be considered as a future RECO12 speaker, please send an email to RECO12pod@gmail.com. We can get it all set for you. Okay, we'll launch off into the rest of our day with the 7th-step prayer, which Jeffrey will say for us.
The 7-step prayer is my favorite prayer. And it's actually the few words before the 7-step prayer. What you're looking for, you're looking with. So what are we looking with when we do the 7-step prayer? Let's look with step 6. And it says it right there on 76. When ready. So let's all of us get to our entirely ready. Whatever that looks like for you. Mine is mind, body, soul. And then I'll begin. My Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and my fellows. Grant me strength as I go from here to do your bidding. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, guys. Freedom is not a dream. It's there beyond the fences that we build all by ourselves. There is one that has all power. That one is God. May God find you now. Keep coming back. And when you do, come all the way in, sit all the way down, and let's trudge this road of happy destiny together. Work it. You are worth it.
Standing still a moment, carving out this time, reflecting on the landscape of this life of mine. Peaks too high to conquer, streams too wide to cross, troughs too deep to walk through without incurring loss. Yet here I am, still standing tall, despite the rough terrain. One like me survived the storms and walked through wind and rain. Still standing, I will fight the good fight, still searching for glimmers of light, feet still on the ground. I can still be found, standing still.
My wings are torn and tattered, but I know I still can fly. I may not soar unfettered, I may not rise too high.
Recorded in the book of life and binded with the seal.